Lauren, it's such a pleasure to welcome you.
Thank you for having me.
You have a very interesting position at DIUx. You work at the Pentagon. You have been with the Undersecretary of the Defense. You handled a budget of about $70 billion in the past. Would be interesting to learn from you what DIUx does.
Absolutely. DIUx's mission is to accelerate innovation, commercial innovation specifically, in the Department of Defense. We know there's a massive amount of fantastic technology being developed by the private sector in areas from autonomy, artificial intelligence, space, you name it, that we really need to be able to bring to bear to leverage for our men and women in uniform. They have an increasingly complex mission, as you know, across the globe, and so for them to do their mission and to do their jobs, we need to make sure they have the best technology available. So DIUx's mission is to source some of that great technology from the commercial sector and bring it to bear for the Department of Defense.
In the past, all advancing technologies used to rest with the Defense Department, going back to the early days of internet and prior to that. So for everybody else, it was science fiction. But science and technology evolution left so fast, fast forward, that people think that there's a lot more innovation happening outside of the defense establishment. Do you buy that argument?
Absolutely. Right now, I think commercial innovation outpaces DoD and federal government R&D spend by a factor of about 3 to 1. So there's a lot more private money that's being invested to develop technology today outside of the federal government. And so for us to be able to access that, we want to be able to leverage all the good that's come out of that private investment rather than simply relying on our own internal R&D.
What are some of the methodologies you apply when you're scouting for great innovative startups who are working towards the defense establishment?
So first of all, we absolutely have to be able to leverage this ecosystem and this community that's out here. Rather than DoD trying to develop its own methodologies of finding and sourcing these startups, we want to go to the source of the communities that source these startups. So the venture capitalists, the technology integrators, the different startup ecosystem folks that we have out here, the accelerators, all of those different groups that understand this particular community, and really start with them because they know the landscape, they know the best companies that are out there, they're already doing this due diligence and market research. So we absolutely want to be able to start with those groups that already do that.
When I look from the entrepreneur's perspective and I want to reach out to Department of Defense, I see big funding and I see an opportunity to scale. But besides these two things, one thing that probably will hold me back as an entrepreneur is nurturing entrepreneurship. So I'm trying to learn from you. DoD doesn't actually deal with nurturing, but you have the other two in your kitty, I think.
Absolutely, and we have to recognize that we have to change our business practices in order to be a nurturing environment for startups, right? So we have to be fast and move at the speed of business, right? A startup is not going to spend 18 months writing a proposal for a government contract, right? They've already gone through multiple funding cycles at that point. So we have to be much faster in our speed of business. We have to be flexible in how we write our contracts, rather than thinking that we can draft an entire contract based on complex rules and regulations that startups might not be aware of. We need to write more commercial-like contracts that they actually have the ability to understand and sign. And finally, we want to always be collaborative, right? We want to work with these startups to understand how best to bring their particular technology to bear for military use cases.
So recently there has been this push about women empowerment, women having a space right from the boardroom all the way down. You have been very successful as a woman to work in a very male-dominated establishment. What is your advice you take for women to have their position, and rightly so, they deserve, and for all the deserving young women who are looking up to people like you?
Absolutely, you just have to be confident in yourself and your abilities and understand that you have as much talent to bring to bear for these different communities, both in technology and defense, as anyone else does. And for the Department of Defense, again, I mentioned that we're facing a very complex web of threats today. We have to be able to bring the entire abilities and talents of our entire population to bear to solve those particular problems. And women are 50% of that population. And if we're not leveraging the entire talents of that 50% of our population, then we're doing ourselves and our military a disservice.
It's wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much for giving us the time.
Absolutely. Thank you.